Hello, hello. I want to talk about the importance of touch because that is the most important subject there is. No subject is as important for us sentient beings here on Earth and beyond as touch is, as physical contact is. Sentient beings, dogs, rats, humans, horses, all of them, also birds, parrots, jays, and other birds, and also reptiles. They survived because of touch. People will think, oh, an egg-laying animal such as an iguana is probably independent. They just procreate, lay eggs, and then they abandon their eggs and so on. But that's definitely not the case. For anyone who has a reptile at home, they know that this reptile responds very well to the touch and this physical contact. I know this from personal experience. I was at Venice Beach, and there's this guy. I dated him for a very short time. He's a bit of a jerk, but there's this guy who has a whole bunch of animals. Some of them are exotic, and he is showing them off at Venice Beach, and he has people take photos with them together. And he also rents them out to Hollywood, which is all totally unethical. So I got into a fight with him about this, and obviously he's a Catholic, and he tried to force his beliefs on me, and I could see quite well the correlation between this clinging to the belief, the ego, the prestige, this wanting to be someone, and then completely forgetting about the sentient beings he's dealing with and he is handling like items. But anyway, he had this really, really large yellow snake, this boa constrictor, and she was used to people, and so he hung her around my neck. And it was an amazing, amazing experience for me because that snake was so docile, and the energy that she radiated, there was an energy of such gratitude and gracefulness and smoothness and docileness and tranquility that this energy field from that snake totally went over into my body, and I felt for the moments that I had her around my neck, I felt like I could breathe again. I felt like life is good, with that snake around my neck. Really large, wonderful. I petted her, very, very felt like rubber. Wonderful, wonderful being. She was moving slightly, but like in total calmness, like as if she really enjoyed that being with me. And he also had a large iguana who kept on running in between those people on Venice Beach, and it was a little bit risky with all these people, some of them on skateboards, and so we didn't want him to get hurt. So I kept on running after that iguana and bringing him back, and that guy, he was too busy with his customers to pay attention to the iguana. But I could clearly feel how the snake and the iguana and all the other animals he had there, they all enjoyed the touch, the attention, the petting. That's the flow of life, being petted, being held. And I'm talking about just this existence of being petted, not the procreative part of it, not the egoic parts of it, not the possessiveness or the objectifications implication of sexual and all of these kind of energy fields. So, but just this, I care about you. This that energy field. I care about you for who you are. And the snake could feel this. And I could feel it from her. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. So, I mean, I've never ever thought about getting a snake or another exotic animal. I was very conservative in my choice with animals: guinea pigs, rabbits, Great Danes, Basset Hound. But a large boa constrictor, that idea never occurred to me, because I just didn't know how I would take care of the animal, or the animal will outgrow the house, and that happened to a family in Florida, kind of. Someone saw this, but no, they were okay. The snake was okay. The house was large enough, but the neighbors, they turned them in, and it was really, this is a real horrible tragic story of the neighbors turning them in. And then the authorities came, and they seized the snake, and they probably put the snake to death. And it's a horrible, horrible story. And it's particularly horrible because the snake was a family member, and the snake was very, 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 very much loving the child, this 2-year-old little girl who was riding on the snake, and the snake was male, and he just loved everyone in that family, and he slithered around, and he felt good, and he felt loved, and he needed that touch. That was so important for him, that touch. And then they came and they took that snake away from this situation where he enjoyed that touch so much. So I don't know how snakes interact in the wild. If they touch each other, they probably do. And so, but they usually live alone, and I don't know how much touch they get from other animals. So this touch type of situation, this can happen now, okay, with humans, because we can reflect on this. We can cognitively think this through. We understand it. We can see things from above. We potentially can. Most people don't. But if we make an effort on this, we can see the situation from above, and we see, okay, this is the situation. Here there's so many counter arguments from there, from the why are they counter arguing? Are they making leather purses out of those animals? That's where they're coming from. Okay, dismissed. What's the other counter argument? Thou shalt not. Dismissed, religious. What other argument? Cautious, be cautious, children, whatever. No, dismissed. It is already refuted. The situation already refuted it by itself. The snake loves the child loves the snake. So there you go. It's love. That is true love. There's a guy who rescued a baby alligator, or I don't know, alligator or crocodile, very large, like 8 feet long or something. And he was just like 8 centimeters long, like this long or something. This long? Long. And he was injured, and so he nursed him back to health, and that was way out there in the Amazon rainforest. And he called him Pocho. And he played with this baby alligator until he was 8 feet long, and they still played just like ever, and alligator way outgrew him and still loved him just as much, and they played together, and they had a specific routine of playing with each other. And at some point a poacher came and got the it is absolutely heartbreaking, But you see the touch, how the alligator needed that. needed this, enjoyed this interaction. Normally, I think reptiles don't get into this too much because they don't have that much of a prefrontal cortex to begin with. I mean, they can't really think things through rationally, cognitively. They don't see the implications of things and all of this. They react very, very rudimentary. But when you see them in interaction with a human, and they have grown up with that human, you see the appreciation of this human, and also of this particular interaction, which sometimes can be a very complicated routine. So right there, it tells me something. It tells me that they need it too. So all beings need this touch. And the reason why I'm explaining this in detail is I want people to understand the depths of it, of the depths of the importance of physical touch. It is so incredibly important. I cannot talk about this too often. I mean, I have to talk about it again and again and again in my videos. We cannot underestimate this importance of physical touch. So anyway, it is my own personal experiences and everything that I've seen, animals and people healing up wounds because of touch, embryos being prematurely born in some kind of brooding chambers, many of them died. The ones who survived are the ones where the mother sat there 24 hours a day holding that little hand through that brooding chamber. Those survived. So what does it tell us? It tells us that physical contact, physical touch is the essence of life. Okay, and I want people to really understand this. And out of this understanding, I think a lot of things have to be reformed. Schools have to be reformed. Just recently, my husband told me that I don't watch the news, but my husband always tells me the news, which is terrible. I hate it. I don't want to hear it, but he tells me anyway because he has to tell someone, and we don't have friends. We're very solitary. So he tells me, of course, and then I have to suffer from the emotions that this stirs up. Recently, an 8-year-old child committed suicide because of the violence in the school. So, right there, I mean, this is a red flag. This should tell everyone that the school system in the United States is not working. Okay, it isn't working. It is brutal. It's cruel and brutal. It's as brutal as the slaughterhouses. It's just as much suffering going on, and the slaughterhouses need to be outlawed too. We need to have a reform on all levels. A complete reform we need. But how do we accomplish this? I don't think it's going to happen by people suddenly waking up and saying, oh boy, yeah, I realize now, we need to reform this. I think it's only just a handful of people who will wake up to this, and even most of those will not agree with me because I'm always like way out there. Like I'm always totally meta normal. So, but at least I'm trying to get these thoughts publicized in some way and somewhat understood. And I make these videos for myself to get that off my chest, and I hope that some other people will also understand what I have to say and put that into some kind of action, some kind of activism for themselves in whichever way you want to do activism. You can make songs about poetry, you can go out to the street, you can collect signatures, you can change the laws, you can do it. I have been doing this for years. I've been petitioning to protect the whales, to save the whales from active sonar, and other petitions as well. And I had some online petitions running also. But there's just not enough people who will sign this. There's not enough people who will agree with me, because they're coming from a completely different perspective, from a very blinded perspective, from a very egoic perspective. But to get back to the subject touch, this is the foundation of existence. It's the foundation for any other reform, for any other thing, is if we can just implement touch as a kind of like a mandatory implementation. If we can reform a school to where there's one loving, very important, loving teacher for a group of 10 children, not more. Okay. 10 children, and they sit in a circle, and they do a lot of meditation together. They sit on the floor on yoga mats, and the teacher teaches this way for many years, and then increasingly also start to use writing and books and computers and so on, and sit on tables and chairs. But the main focus, particularly in the early years, sitting in a circle and doing meditation together and yoga, and very, very important, touch, doing touch, where the teacher does touch therapy with the children, and also where the children touch each other's faces like this. I learned this from Heidi in Berlin, my yoga teacher, and that was when I was studying psychology. I went to see Heidi in her beautiful house in the Grunewald, beautiful area, beautiful home, formerly owned by some kind of circus person, and but that they didn't know better, so the circus person. But anyway, it's a different story. What I learned from Heidi is that you can touch each other through a material. You can take a material like, for example, take something like this here, like this, a piece of dried ivy, and you gently touch the face, half of the face of someone, for like 5 minutes. It was an amazing experience. And then we were to sit there and just meditate on how it feels, how our face feels, how the different sides compare, the side that was petted and the side that was not petted. And the side that was petted, it was prickly and it was circulated, and it was definitely an amazing tingly feeling throughout the brain. And then we switched, and the other person did the other person's face, and then they switched again, and then the other person did the other side of the former person's face, and then vice versa, and so that then both sides were equally petted. It was very, very amazing, and I'm very deeply grateful to Heidi that we had this experience, and that I could pass this experience on to other people, and the importance of touch, the high importance of this, and to make something with it, not let this be forgotten in some corner of a library, but dig it out and make something with this incredibly important information. And a lot of people, they will dismiss that. And when I talk to people on the internet, they'll call me crackpot, clown. They even tell people under my videos, don't listen to that clown. Yeah, wow. It's like, what are they afraid of? Are they afraid that the clown could sort of get an idea into people's heads? Is he corporate? Is he paid by the corporations? Are the corporations afraid that this could happen, that people could wake up to the idea, hey, we need touch, And maybe if they all get touch, maybe they won't buy so many things anymore. Maybe they don't need to buy so many things to comfort themselves. So, yeah, all of this is interconnected. And that's why there's such a resistance from the corporate agenda to anything that has to do with empowerment and self-healing and natural healing, holistic healing, crystal healing, touch, massage, all of this, geothermal baths, clay cures, all of that is so utterly important for our health. And the corporate agenda is afraid of this because then they will lose their customers and the medical industry loses their customers. So it's like in the very end, wait a minute, aren't you a doctor? Aren't you a pharmaceutical scientist to cure something? Aren't you in there to help? And then, oops, they completely lost touch with that idea. They have to realize, wait a minute, I'm not at all in there to help anymore. I am in there to make money. I'm in there to keep my customers and to increase the amount of customers. So that's not helping, and that's what Sri Krishnamurti said and warned us about when he said that when we develop an idea and a self-image and a prestige and all of this, we create this radius around us, and anyone who leaps out of that radius is becoming a threat. And in that moment where they perceive someone else as a threat to that self-image, then love is no longer possible. Then the moment you perceive someone else as a threat to your ego, you are not capable of loving that person in that moment. It cancels each other out. And that's why we need to come back to the realization, what do I really want? If you are a corporate market psychologist, for example, like Richard Berman, just using this example, or you're the head of a company that makes pesticides, or if you are someone who works in a laboratory and is trying to figure something out that cures something, and then you can write your signature on it and say, this is my patent. I have created this molecule, from really toxic material. Then what happens is you create an image, and then you have to ask yourself, why do you want this? And why do you want to create this image? And then you dig a little deeper, and then you come to the realization, I am doing this to get liked, to get respected by society, to get women, to get prestige. I'm doing this so I can buy suits that are expensive, that will also get me more respect, and I can be invited to these parties, and I can be respected by those people and by those other respected people, and it becomes a chain reaction that becomes so compacted that people can't see through this at all anymore. it becomes so cluttered and chaotic that no one can really dig through this anymore. I have dealt with this my whole life. I do see through this. I see I can observe all of this from above. I am very grateful that I studied psychology in university, also with Dr. Arthur Janov in LA, to become a primal therapist. Where I learned the most is on the internet, just on my own. I had a buffet, an all you can think buffet of any kind of reaction, reactivity, mental illness that you can think of. And I learned so much from all of this, from this concoction of emotions and obnoxious neurosis. And it has also frightened me. It frightened me so much that I had a panic attack in 2012. So I paid a very, very large price to be able to sit here and say, I can see this from above. I paid my dues to be able to say that. Honestly, it was. And then if I look back on it, and I'm also in an antinatalist group on Facebook, and someone recently just directly asked the question, do you hate your life? And I was shocked that I had to say yes. And people have asked in the past many times, would you rather, if you could wind back, and would you rather not have existed? My answer is yes. Because my life was pure hell. Absolute terror and torment. And it still is. I feel absolute terror at what I see in the world, at the neurosis, the levels of neurosis that I see in the world. I think most people don't have any clue. They probably also don't want to see it. They don't want to realize how incredibly sick some people are. In Germany too, they're not no better. And it's just a little bit differently structured, a little bit more organized on the surface level. But if you dig down, you see unbelievable ego issues and self-image and absolute terror of being discovered as weak, or so particularly among men. That's just around the whole globe. It is really bad with men. That's what I noticed. And I feel sorry for them, because they must be pressure cookers. It's incredible, the fear of of being discovered by other people, of being seen as what they really are, like a shivering nerve that's underneath that bloated ego, underneath that ego of I am grand, and I'm this grand academic, grand philosopher, and I get it all, and I am totally this or totally that. So that's really, really severe. So for women, it's not so severe because they have neurosis on a different level. But for men, it's women, at least, they are not expected to not cry. So we can cry our eyes out. We might be called some names, but it's not that big of a deal. So if a man cries, it's still to this day, I mean, it's 2017, and I still see it. I not only among my generation, but I even see it among the kids. Although there's way more people among the 20-year-olds who are more awakened and more aware. But there's also a lot of peer pressuring going on. Depends on, I mean, they have a higher percentage of indigos and those star and crystal children. So it's a higher percentage now than there was before. So they're all coming now. They're coming to help. But the other ones, the ones that are less evolved, the stagnator souls and the students of life, they may be kind of driving the train of more awareness, but they themselves are not aware, so they see the awareness that of the train they're driving with, because that's their generation. They see this again as some kind of prestige or some kind of self-image, so they don't understand what it really is. So a stagnator cannot see, for example, the word enlightenment. For a stagnator, enlightenment is always this experience that they want to have. It's always coming from a selfish mindset. It's not coming from the altruism that is enlightenment. Enlightenment is when you have completely dissolved the self, when you're completely mother or father and therefore the other. That's why, for example, Baba, in the Sanskrit, Sai Baba, the Baba it's a very rudimentary word. Sigi Jung would be very interested to hear what I have to say about this, because my little niece, when she was just 2 years old or something, just before she could talk, when she saw the video footage of my Great Dane Kenny, she couldn't talk yet. She pointed at him and she said, Baba, 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 over and over again. Baba is the father. The Baba is the father figure, or the mother, I don't know how they call mother. Babushka is, for example, is the grandmother in Russian. And so you become the giver. People, when they get older and when they wise up, they dissolve a bunch of self. So then they become like the giver for the children or the grandchildren. And it's no longer so much about myself, it's more about them. So this is what happens in a lot of families, and that's a very healthy development. So therefore Baba, the father, is becoming the giver, and the Baba is a very high title for a very wise older man. And so my niece Wanda, she saw the Baba, she recognized that being in my Great Dane Kenny, because Kenny was the reincarnation of Gautama Buddha, and that is the ultimate Baba, that is the ultimate giver, the absolute, the infinite. And she saw that this was happening on a very, 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 on a delta level of consciousness. This was not something that went through the prefrontal cortex or any kind of cognition. This was something that came from a very visceral and a very akashic memory. And it gave me goosebumps when my brother told me about this. And it's just amazing. And I know who she is. I know who she was in her former life, someone I dearly, dearly loved. And it's just so amazing for me to see this, And so there's always plus and minus, When you suffer a lot, you come out the end of the tunnel, you have so much more insight about things. You see things that other people will call completely crazy. A lot of people don't dare to say what they see. A lot of children don't dare to say what they see or recognize, because of the reactions from people around them, from the ego energies that cannot handle it. Can absolutely not handle it. I've always been way couple steps outside of people's yank back range. As a child already too. I was always pulling people in their uncomfort zones. And so I got yanked back into their comfort zone brutally sometimes. And all of this is extremely traumatic. Most people shut down when that happens, and they become normal, and their lives are bleak, and that is not what they really want to feel and want to live. What we want to feel and live is that what we came here to this existence to do. And that is not to sit there in fear. And that's what I do a lot. So this is my first tentacle that goes out to the world. Are these videos? It's like a cat who's scared, who reaches out with one paw and says, I'm scared, but I also want to reach out. I want the touch from others. I want you to touch me. I want you to love me. I'm a sentient being, And I also want to reach you with my tentacle or my paw. I want to touch you too. I want to touch your cheek too. I want to touch your mind. I want to connect with you. I want to interact with you. I want to co-create something. So you guys take care.